Good morning. My name is Jerry Wellik, and I'm happy to be with you today. And the title of my talk is Being Present. So I'm a storyteller, and as well as a poet and a master teacher and healer. In stories, things come in threes. So I'm going to be focusing on patterns of three today. Help me to remember, and maybe it'll make it easier for you to remember. So we're going to start by bowing. If you would just please put your hands together. Bow firstly to the teachings that have come through us, the teachings, the wisdom of Spring Forest Qigong and all the wisdom that we've obtained in our lives. Now we'll bow to the masters, to Master Lin and all of the people that have gone before us, the masters in all areas of our lives, our ancestors. And then we'll bow to each other, to the community. And so this is a good way to start, is by bowing and giving thanks and being grateful for being here. And as I was preparing this talk, I reread what I had written and how it was presented to you. And it said that I'm going to share with you 3 strategies for being present in your life. So just to keep it simple, it's going to be ABC. 3 things, the 3 main things, the 3 main points that I want to make. The first one is A, abracadabra. You've probably heard that word and what some magicians use. But recently I found the meaning of that word, and I've always liked magic. And abracadabra means, as I speak, I create, or what I speak, I create. And that has fascinated me since learning that. Abracadabra comes from the Aramaic, which predates Hebrew, and it's actually the language that Jesus spoke. But there was this wisdom that's been passed down about the power of words and the meaning of words. And so that whole idea of A is to be attentive to what we're speaking and to be aware of how powerful our words and our thoughts are, and to be wise in our speaking and our thinking, and to be careful. That's a B also. But the A is that one of paying attention, being aware, being active in knowing that our words and our thoughts are very, very powerful. The B, as I was preparing for B, I like one of the persons that I like very much. One of my masters is Gandhi, and he's famous for saying, "Be the change you want to see in the world." And that's the whole idea of being present. Is just be like, let go of everything else. You have to empty your mind. You have to be a good listener to be present. Now, I've prided myself on being a storyteller. It's one of the things that I love so much in my life. But what I've learned now is that it's not so much storytelling, but story listening. To listen and to empty ourselves, and that's when we can be present for another person. So it's the greatest gift that we can give another person, is to be present and to really attend to them. And if we can empty ourselves, the wisdom is already inside of us. It's there already. So that's the B. The C has to do with community. And our Spring Forest Qigong family is a community. I've loved the work of Jalaluddin Rumi. I'm a very much fan of Rumi's work. And he lived he's a 12th century mystic poet, or is it 13th century, excuse me, mystic poet. But the community was what it was all about. And Rumi's work really came from his meeting with a good friend of his whose name was Shams of Tabriz. And the relationship they had, that's what I want, is to be when I want to look at the person and be with the person that I'm with, or with anything that I'm with, to be 100% there. There's so much wisdom that just bubbles up from us, inside of us, when we can be absolutely present. So ABC, abracadabra, be the change you want to see, and realize the power of community. Master Lin, with whom I've studied for the last 23 years, says that he says so many little things that make such a big difference. But one of them that I really like is to allow the person that you're with to be your teacher, so that your students are your best teachers. That's helped me immensely in my teaching and in my being. I've been a university professor for many years and a teacher of special education at varying levels. And that background is, I'm just very, very happy that I've found something that is very, very meaningful and gives me great pleasure in my life. And that's the greatest gift. I feel like if I can have that little flame burning in me on the inside, that little spark of love, that's what I want to share with the world. And I feel like that's my life purpose. So I'll be telling you some stories today. I'll even tell you how I became a professional storyteller. Maybe I'll start with that one. When I got into Spring Forest Qigong about 2000, I didn't realize one of the things that I had been ill and was diagnosed with several things. I'm a Vietnam vet and was diagnosed with PTSD and varying things like bone disease and leukemia and what have you. And I was very, very worried that I was going to be ill for the rest of my life, and I wanted to continue to teach. And I think one of the great gifts that I've had in my life is that when I've been in need, the right person shows up, an angel shows up, or the teacher shows up, the master shows up. And it was in a series of little events that happened about that time when I was very worried that I was going to have to quit teaching and that I was going to have a life of being ill. And I met Master Lin at that time, and my life is, I have a happy life. But if I hadn't been ill, I wouldn't have met Master Lin. So it was actually a great gift that I was ill. And I look at the illness now as a great resource for me to learn. And actually, the illness was part of the whole learning process, that just calling it a gift and treating it as a gift, that my body was telling me there was something that I needed to change. And I'm still in the process of changing. So the C also could mean change, and choosing are words that start with C. But all of the words that we choose, I feel like I'm choosing more wisely now and allowing those thoughts that aren't serving me to just pass through, and like a bird flying over, and just pass through. So the So I was going to tell you the story of how I became a professional storyteller. I was taking a class on storytelling at Metro State, which is a university in Minneapolis, with a teacher by the name of Lauren Nebe, and I was working on the story of my experience of being a veteran. And one day, he asked me to tell a piece of the story, and I told it, and then he handed me a quarter. And I took it and put it in my pocket, and I was just wondering, what's this about? And he says, well, now you're a professional storyteller. You've accepted money for telling a story. But that story, I don't exactly remember what it is, but in that story, I changed from being a victim to being the agent of my own life. I became the creator and the designer of my own life, and that's what I wanted to do. And sometimes you hear a story of some sort, and it might even rub you a little bit and like irritate you a little bit. Well, that's a story that you need to pay attention to. I want to tell you another little story about when our younger daughter, we have two daughters, they both live on the East Coast. And our younger daughter when she was in 6th grade, she was going to school in St. Cloud, Minnesota, at Lake Agassiz School. No, not Lake Agassiz School. That was the one in North Dakota. Sorry, I got the wrong name there. But she was in elementary school at that time. And the 6th grade teacher knew that I'd like to tell stories, and I'd been told a few stories at the school in various places. And so he invited me to do a week-long workshop. So I went in like being the artist in the schools. So for a week long, I went in at like 1 o'clock, 1 to 2 o'clock every day for 1 week. And I was so happy. I just told lots of stories and read poems and had a good time with the kids. The evening of the Friday afternoon after that workshop was over, I was giving Bethany and a few of her friends a ride in the car. And, they were still telling some of the stories and whatnot. And then I looked at Bethany, because I thought, well, she's going to say, oh, Dad, you did such a good job. And she said something that really surprised me. She said, Dad, why do you tell all of that crap in between, all of that riffing that you do? Why don't you just tell the stories and the poems? You don't need to do all of that explaining. And it was a funny thing, but that was the best advice she could have possibly ever given me. And that's what I like about Bethany. She lives in New York. She lives in Manhattan. She tells it like it is. And I love her dearly. But that one was really quite a shock for me. But I remember that little story, and that's such good advice. So I think I do my best teaching when I just tell a story and tell a poem and cut out all of the riffraff in between and not go on and on and on with my stories. So I'm going to tell you now just a very brief little story about what happened during COVID. It was about a year into COVID, and it was hard for me to be at home. But one day I got a letter in the mail. The reason it's hard for me to be at home is I like to be with people, and I had to change a lot of my what I was doing, my habits at that time. And I got this letter. That was actually I'm not remembering if it was an email. I think it was an actual letter. And so a woman wrote to me and she said, during COVID, I'm a preschool teacher and I was having so much difficulty knowing what to do. And one day I looked up on the shelf and the notes from your class were there. And I just pulled down the notes and there was one word, imperturbable. And I read that word and I just really took it to heart. And that's what's carried me through the COVID period. Being imperturbable, unshakable, at peace no matter what. And sometimes just one word like that, choosing one word and focusing on it and just being that. But that was really a good story for me. It kept me going and helped me then look at, well, what other words could I use that would describe how I want to be? And one of the activities that I do in teaching poetry is to do a name poem, or it's called an acrostic, where you write your name vertically and then you choose terms that start with a certain letter or with your letter of your name. So for instance, mine is Jerry, Jerry. So a word sometimes I use to describe myself is jester or joyful. E, sometimes I was wondering what E should be, but now I've thought of the terms very comparable to imperturbable, but equanimous. That's how I want to be, at peace, peaceful and resourceful. So R, resourceful, resilient, Y, yarn spinner. So it's just a little activity, but I've done that kind of activity with kids and with adults, and choosing wisely how you describe yourself, you become what you speak. So it's just one of the little things that you can do to choose words wisely. And in addition to teaching Qigong, I have a practice group and I teach Qigong at the Whitney Senior Center in St. Cloud. It's the activity. Well, I have this class. It's called Poetry Drop-In, and it's kind of a combination of storytelling, poetry, construction. But I incorporate a lot of my Qigong activities in there. And I feel like I'm a much better storyteller in person and human being as a result of these stories that I'm able to construct and little activities that I do. Just this week on Monday, when I was doing my Spring Forest Qigong active exercises or my practice group at the Whitney Center, people just kind of come and go. There's like about 10 of them that are there every time, and then some join for a while. But there was an older lady there, and she reminded me of something. I thought I recognized her, but I hadn't seen her for a long time, so I didn't quite know what her name was. And she said, "Are you Jerry Wellik?" And I said, "Yeah." She said, "Well, I met you in this very room 41 years ago." I'm scratching my head. 41 years ago, that would be in the early 80s. What was I doing then? Well, she said, "You did this workshop for foster grandparents," and I was the organizer of the foster grandparent group in a small rural town here near St. Cloud. And she said, you were reciting poems and talking about the work that you were doing with intergenerational storytelling. And it brought back that memory. And actually, that was one of the things that I did much of the time when I was teaching, and still am doing that kind of thing, is intergenerational storytelling. Getting people around in a circle, young children and adults, and exchanging, telling stories. And after she told me that, I came home and I was trying to think of, well, what was the best activity that worked with the intergenerational storytelling. And I worked with a friend of mine named Frank Kazimek. We taught together for 21 years. And we used to do this little activity in the schools where we'd bring adults, retired adults that were like in foster grandparent program with children, and then have them do writing activities. But the favorite one that I had was that I remember was we used the poem by Robert Frost, a very brief poem. It goes like this: "We stand in the center and suppose," or the secret sits in the center and, no, we We stand round in a circle and suppose, but the secret sits in the middle and knows. Okay, let me say that again. We stand round in a circle and suppose, but the secret sits in the middle and knows. And then we ask the kids, like there was a group of usually 6, 3 adults, three elders, and 3 young kids, to ask them what that meant. And it was just so wonderful because the kids had so much wisdom, and they were sharing with the elders the stories, and together then we created little poems to bring together, crystallize what they had been learning and doing. Excuse me. Now, the reason that I like that activity so much is because when I was growing up, one of my favorite things to do was on Sunday afternoons. I grew up in a little bohemian community in northern Iowa, and it was a very self-contained kind of little community. All of the people there were farmers, and many of them had another occupation, like a mechanic or a musician or other things, or sold seed corn. But most of them, I mean, all of them, actually, as I remember, were engaged in something about farming. And we'd go to the Catholic Church, St. Wenceslas Catholic Church, on Sunday morning, and then we'd go to church again at night, and the Mass would be in Bohemian, because it was actually Czech, but they called it Bohemian because all of these people had come from that one area of the Czech Republic, Bohemia. And we would sit around in a circle. The adults, they'd move the chairs in a circle, and then they would just tell the stories of the week. And they were solving each other's problems. And what I like to do is my Uncle Frank, my dad's older brother, just loved me so much. I just like to sit on his lap. And I just could feel his love. He just loved me so much. It was just an ideal situation. But he was a very, very good storyteller. And he always spoke his stories in Bohemian. And something that he said, later in my life that he told me that has stayed with me. It's just a little saying, but it was in Bohemian. He said, "Jeslik success na uchit, nyajdicinyakoho torozumi paksi zapamatu jak pracia." If you want to know how to do something, hang around with somebody that does it well, and then you just soak it up from them. So it's like, if you want to learn how to do something, find someone who does it well, and then just hang around with them. And that's that being present. Find people that you love and that you want to learn from, and books that you want to learn from, and choose wisely. Be that change and make wise choices. The B and C there. So that's... there's so many things. I've had the chance to co-teach with so many good teachers, both in Spring Forest Qigong, many masters. I've had the chance to co-teach or assist, and I love that kind of operation. Excuse me, that mode. I have to take a little more water here. But how we learn from each other, and it's a continual thing to be in dialogue and be gaining listening and being present to somebody else's perspective on life. I had the chance when I was in graduate school to co-teach with a guy named Art Spring, and he was a brilliant teacher. And he used to quote Dostoevsky. He'd say this. This is from the brothers Karamazov. People talk a lot to you about your education, but some good sacred memory preserved since childhood is the best education. A person who carries many such memories with her through life, at the end of her days, if she only has one such memory left in her heart, sometimes that will be the means of saving us. And so he would listen so carefully to students and listen for the little stories that they would reveal about when they were the most alive or what they loved. And oftentimes early on, there would be something that they did where they fell in love with something, and then that kind of became their life thread. That's what they ended up doing their life, because they found their purpose and they were doing what they love. And that's one of the things I like about Rumi. So many of his poems are about finding what you love, what your life purpose is, and then doing that. And as a matter of fact, that's very congruent with the teachings of Spring Forest Qigong. Do what you love to do. Be that. Pretty soon you just become that which you do over and over again and what you love. And so then your whole life is like lovemaking. It's just like everything you do can be done in the frame of love. It's a simple thing, but we need to focus on it and be consistent with it. And I love the 6 keys of Spring Forest Qigong. Faith. Have faith, that trust in the divine and in that thread that works through us. Confidence, and it comes from doing it over and over again. Pretty soon you become that. Call on your master. And I love that work that Master Lin has continued to refine how we work with the master. And it's really helped me to start not only thinking of having the master, but also technical masters. And then we visualize. And visualize means all of the senses. Put it into your senses to bring it into being. Then the next one is to be consistent. Do it over and over and over again. And then, and I missed focus. What do we focus on? So if I just go through that again: faith, confidence, call on the master's energy, visualization, focus. Focus on what it is that you love and what you're at your best and what you want to bring into being. And then we let go of the symptoms and the distractions. And then the last one is consistency, to do it over and over and over again until we become it. We become the change that we want to see in the world. We become that. So just trying to think of what happens, the benefits of this, I think this practice of doing something that you love over and over and over again is that synchronous kind of events happen. The teacher shows up, the right events happen. So it's that synchronicity that happens. It's one of the benefits that I've found, that it's just if I'm doing what I love to do, the right thing just seems to bubble up and pop up. And then another thing happens is then the worry dissipates because you're not focusing on that. You're focusing yours, bringing it back to what you're trying to bring into being. So sometimes funny little event will happen, and you just think, well, that was just some event. But if you just really pay attention to it, there's usually some message that's there behind that event. And there was a story just occurred to me. Sometimes I'm a little bit random here, so I hope you can follow with me. But if you just come back to this, all has something to do with ABCs. But this is an event. Actually, everything that you are, everybody has a beautiful gift. And if you look at this as everybody brings something to the world, otherwise we wouldn't be here. everybody is bringing some gift to the world. And I think one of the gifts that I have is that and what I guess I found out about myself is when I met Master Lin and started studying in the Spring Forest Qigong family, I think what happened is that I started loving myself and forgiving myself. And that's I think what we all want is love, and it's very important to forgive. Otherwise, the old stories get in the way. But much of my life, I was kind of a dreamer, and I got into trouble sometimes with my dad on the farm. I'm the seventh child, and I have three older brothers, and they were pretty good workers on the farm, and I was a little bit more of a daydreamer, and so sometimes I had a little clash with my dad. But I realized how much he really loved me, but I could also trigger the anger, I guess. But nonetheless, I was sometimes I would forget tools around and that kind of stuff, and but anyway, here I am. I love school. I could be if I could have been a student my whole life, I guess maybe I am a student of just learning in life. But when I was in graduate school, I got to work with this fellow. He was my advisor. He was a little Steve Harlow is his name. He's just a little Jewish rabbi. I just loved this guy. He had the greatest stories. But as I was finishing my dissertation, and he hurt his back, and he was in the hospital, and he was not able to finish teaching some of his classes, and I was his graduate assistant. So I said, well, I can teach your classes. And he was teaching a class at North Dakota State. I was going to school in Grand Forks, the University of North Dakota, and he was teaching a class. I think it was at Moorhead State. It was in Fargo. But I went down. He wanted me to take the class for him, to fill in. And I went really early to Fargo that day and went to the Moorhead State Library. And then I thought, gosh, I forgot to ask Steve what I was supposed to talk about. There was a theme. I didn't have the syllabus or anything, and I didn't know what I was. So I went to the library early, and he had a lot of research on what he was doing on, he called it encountering. And it was on the work of Abraham Maslow. And so I went to that part of the library. I'm just wondering now, here I'm going to be teaching in about an hour, and what am I going to do? And I don't know, I just turned around. I was in that section of the library, and a book fell off the shelf. And I picked it up, and the name of the book was Beyond Boredom and Anxiety by Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. And it was on the whole concept of flow. And I took that book, I just paged through it. And I didn't have a library card there, but I just took a few notes. And then I made my presentation on flow, on what I gleaned out of this about the concept of play and of fun and how important that is in our lives. And that little serendipitous act actually surprised me. It was like that kind of became what I do in my life. And I could have just said, well, that was just a serendipitous thing, but I paid attention to it. And so for many years I was studying what flow was and the fun and the how important play is. But now what I realize is that was so much in the external world, and what I've learned from my work with Master Lin is the work of the inner world. I'm going to just recite a few poems here. One of my favorite projects that I did when I was working with Frank Kazimic was we did a project called the Favorite Poem Project. In 1999, The poet laureate of the United States was Robert Pinsky. And when somebody's named the poet laureate of the United States, they have some project that they do. And his project was to go around and interview people all over the world or all over the United States and find out what their favorite poem was. And then they took some of them and they had a format for how they would present the poem. They'd ask them what their favorite poem is, have them recite it, then just collect a little story about why they liked that poem so much, and then they'd recite the poem again. And then the ones that they videotaped all of these stories or these poems, and then the best of the best they published in books of poetry. And so when Frank and I were doing that project, my friend Frank Kaznick and I were co-teaching, we went around and a little tape recorder. I think I have one here somewhere, but just a little handheld tape recorder. And what we would do is just ask somebody, "What's your favorite poem?" And during that project, there were so many fun things that I learned about people from them reciting their poem. And one of them was one of my colleagues. His name was Boyd Purdom. He was an elementary ed professor. And I asked him, I said, "Boyd, do you have a favorite poem?" And first he said, "Well, I don't remember poems." And then just a little bit later, he says, "Well, in Sunday school, when I was in 7th grade, I learned this poem." And then he recited it. It was by Victor Hugo. It goes like this: "Be like the bird who, halting in flight, on limb too slight, feels it give way beneath him, yet sings, knowing he hath wings." And when he recited the poem, he just became like a little child again, just remembering all of that. I'm going to recite the poem again, but this time with the feminine. "Be like the bird who, halting in flight, on limb too slight, feels it give way beneath her, yet sings, knowing she hath wings." So just in reciting that poem, you almost become that poem, like that bird. But that was just like one of those like surprising things that came out from him. Another one that this was another interview that I had with another colleague in the elementary ed department. Her name is Pat Heine. And I don't know if she misunderstood the assignment or whatever, but I said, "Pat, do you have a favorite poem?" And then she said, here's a poem you might like, Jerry. It's by Beatrice Shank D. Rayner. It was a children's book of poems. And so she read the poem to me. It goes like this: "Keep a poem in your pocket and a picture in your head, and you'll never feel lonely at night when you're in bed. The little poem will sing to you, the little picture bring to you a dozen dreams to dance to you at night when you're in bed. So keep a picture in your pocket and a poem in your head, and you'll never feel lonely at night when you're in bed." I love that poem so much, so I memorized it, and I've done that. I've carried poems in my pocket. I have so many of them. I emptied from my wallet this morning some of the poems that I love, and I'm going to make sure that so I'm going to just share some of these favorite poems with you in the next 5 minutes. I'll see which ones might be fitting, and then we'll just end with a little meditation. But this is one by Rumi that I like, and this one I co-teach with Emily Jarrett Hughes, and we met in this poem. Excuse me. It's called "Some Kiss We Want." Well, I guess I recited a poem by Rumi at a level 4 Spring Forest Qigong retreat years ago, and Emily was there. And somehow this poem, we both now memorized it and we use it in our teaching, but I'll just recite the poem for you. It's called Some Kiss We Want by Jalaluddin Rumi. There is some kiss we want with our whole lives, the touch of spirit on the body. Seawater begs the pearl to break its shell, and the lily, how passionately it needs some wild darling. At night, I open the window and ask the moon to come and press its face against mine. Breathe into me. Close the language door and open the love window. The moon won't use the door, only the window. Another one by Rumi that I like. This one is The Breeze at Dawn. The breeze at dawn has secrets to tell you. Don't go back to sleep. You must ask for what you really want. Don't go back to sleep. People are going back and forth across the door sill where the two worlds touch. The door is round and open. Don't go back to sleep. Let's see, here's a couple on trees. This one, I have a friend who somehow talks with trees, somehow is by trees and gets the wisdom of the trees. I've been at numerous conferences where they like being around him because he seems to get messages from trees. So I've committed this poem to heart, to learn by heart, because I think of this and think about my friend Shane and how he gets messages from trees. Trees by W.S. Merwin. I am looking at trees. They may be one of the things I will miss most from the earth, though many of the ones I have seen already I cannot remember. And though I seldom embrace the ones I see and have never been able to speak with one, I listen to them tenderly. Their names have never touched them. They have stood round my sleep, and when it was forbidden to climb them, they have carried me in their branches. That's Trees by W.S. Merwin. Here's one. I'm going to end with, I need to do at least one by my favorite poet, William Stafford, and then I'll end with one by Shel Silverstein before we do our little meditation. But this one is it's recorded in a book by William Stafford, and it was published. This book was published after he'd passed. He died in 1993. He was a conscientious objector in World War II, long before conscientious objectors were. It was very difficult to be a conscientious objector at that time in World War II because it was a popular war, and but he wrote so many poems, and he wrote he was like in a service camp doing service work for 4 years during World War II, and then he started writing poems. And then the last 14 years of his life, he wrote a poem every day. But this is my favorite. It's called The Way It Is. There's a thread you follow. It goes among things that change, but it doesn't change. People wonder about what you are pursuing. You have to explain about the thread, but it is hard for others to see. While you hold it, you can't get lost. Tragedies happen. People get hurt or die. You suffer and get old. Nothing you do can stop time unfolding. You don't ever let go of the thread. That thread, what you love, your connection, your life purpose, your connection to the divine. It encapsulates so much about what Spring Forest Qigong is for me. And I like reciting that poem, and then I think about all of that love and all of the wisdom that's been passed down to me. And then one final poem here. This one I just learned. I think I have it pretty close by heart. But it's one from Shel Silverstein. It's called The Poetry. It's in the second edition of Falling Up. It goes like this. Underneath the poetry, come and rest a while with me, and watch the way the word web weaves between the shady story leaves. The branches of the poetry reach from the mountains to the sea. So come and sit and dream and climb. Just don't get hit by falling rhymes. Somehow I say that poem and I love the poem and I feel like a young child again, just so filled with loving fun and play. And the other night, as I was reading this poem and learning it, I was reciting it before I fell asleep, and a funny thing happened. I was thinking of the Buddha sitting under the Bodhi tree, and I wondered what Buddha was reciting when he was reciting. So I'm going to try this poem with sitting under the Bodhi tree instead of sitting under the poetry. See how that works. Underneath the Bodhi tree, come and rest a while with me, and watch the way the word web weaves between the shady story leaves. The branches of the poetry, or the branches of the Bodhi tree, reach from the mountains to the sea. So come and sit and dream and climb. Just don't get hit by falling rhymes. Oh my gosh, I just thought of something too. I did write a poem yesterday. Sometimes people ask me to recite one of my own poems. So this poem, I wrote this. This is my poem of the day. I write a poem every day, but they're just tiny little poems. This one, I ran across this poem by Rumi. It goes like this. Giving thanks for abundance is greater than the abundance itself. Let me read that again. Giving thanks for abundance is greater than the abundance itself. So my take on this, my poem, I wrote a poem that I considered the first poem as as kind of the model for me to write from. It's called Epigraph. And so the poem that I wrote is, I'm grateful for my friend Rumi because he reminds me to be grateful. I'm grateful for you folks, for everybody that I meet, everybody in the Spring Forest Qigong family, because when I'm with you, I want to just remember how grateful I am to be with you. And so with love and with joy and with peace and contentment, and especially with gratitude, I thank you for being with me today. And we'll just end with a little bit of a meditation. I like this brief little meditation. So if you would just take 3 slow, gentle, deep breaths. Bring the light to your lower dantian, just a dim light. And just be grateful for that light and just set a little purpose for yourself. Just one little thing that you would like to heal. And set that intention, feeling that it's already accomplished. And then let the light move up to the middle dantian. Say the password, I am in the universe is in my body, the universe and I combine together as one. And then just feel that divine thread, that coming from the divine, filling you, connecting with the spark in your heart. And it gets bigger and bigger so that all that light around you just grows and you're breathing in the healing light of the universe. And on exhale, those old stories, the old thoughts just float back into the ends of the universe. And just feel how good it feels to be immersed in this light. And then just bring that light just to the heart level. And from the heart, right from that little spark in your heart, so as the essence of the chi, send Just find one place in your body where you'd like to have more light, where you'd like to light up the fire in that one place. Just choose one place that comes to you where you'd like to have a blessing and a healing. And breathe into that place and see that beautiful light lighting up with joy. The little flame of light. And just feel how good that feels, and how wonderful it feels, and how grateful you are that we are learning this. Anybody can learn to do this. And we have the master inside of us comes alive when we connect with our master. And just feel how good that feels and say, thank you, my God, thank you. And it's already done. And then just let the light go back to the middle dantian, then down to the lower dantian, and then see it there in the lower dantian, spinning like a ball, spinning, faster and faster, and getting brighter and brighter and warmer. And then when it's the size of an energy pill, tuck it into the lower dantian. Take a couple of cleansing breaths, purifying breaths. And then rub your hands together nice and warm. Massage your face. Comb the scalp, front to back. Cup the scalp, front to back. Cup the base of the head. And massage the ears. All the way down. And I like, I was, you probably know my age from this, but there was a guy named Leo Buscaglia, he used to be on the TV. He was also a professor of special education. And when he came back from India, he gave talks and he would bow, he would say, Namaste. Namaste means I honor the place in you where the entire universe resides. I honor the place in you where lies your light and your love and your truth and your unity and your peace. I honor the place in you where if you're in that place in you and I'm in that place in me, there's only one. There's only one of us. Namaste. Thank you.